Bitter Elena Harper walked out of Apex Tech with nothing but a cardboard box and a broken dream. 15 years of brilliance erased in a single meeting. But what if the woman they discarded held a secret so explosive it could topple an empire? A pen engraved with "To Our Guiding Light" trembled in her hand as tears stained the ink, whispering a promise of vengeance. Or redemption. Could one betrayal ignite a revolution in Silicon Valley? Subscribe now and join us on this roller coaster. Help us hit 1,000 subscribers first. Dr. Elena Harper walked out of Apex Tech with nothing but a cardboard box and a broken dream. 15 years of brilliance erased in a single meeting. But what if the woman they discarded held a secret so explosive it could topple an empire? A pen engraved with "To Our Guiding Light" trembled in her hand as tears stained the ink, whispering a promise of vengeance or redemption. Could one betrayal ignite a revolution in Silicon Valley? Subscribe now and join us on this roller coaster. Help us hit 1,000 subscribers first. The glass-walled conference room at Apex Tech's Silicon Valley headquarters buzzed with sterile efficiency that Friday morning, March 7th, 2025. Elena sat ramrod straight, her silver-streaked hair pulled into a tight bun, her hazel eyes fixed on Margaret Maggie Reynolds across the polished table. Maggie, her manager of 7 years, leaned forward with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, her manicured nails tapping a manila folder. Beside her, Rachel, Kim from HR, adjusted her glasses, her face a mask of rehearsed sympathy. The air smelled faintly of coffee and betrayal. Elena, after 15 years with Apex Tech, we're restructuring your position, Maggie began, her voice smooth as a corporate press release. The company's moving in a new direction. Younger, more agile. You understand, right? It's not personal. Elena's lips twitched into a faint, bitter smile. She understood plenty. 3 weeks ago, a misdirected email from Chuck Grayson, Apex Tech's swaggering CEO, had landed in her inbox. Harper's expendable, cut her by Q1 end, reassign her team to product dev, optimize costs. She'd stared at that screen until the words blurred, her chest tightening as if the building itself were collapsing on her. Expendable. After 15 years of 60-hour weeks, missed birthdays, and a son's funeral she'd barely had time to grieve. Rachel slid the folder across the table. Your contributions have been valuable, Elena, but we're consolidating the research division under product development. This is your severance, 2 weeks per year of service, 3 months of health coverage, career counseling resources. Elena took the folder without opening it, her fingers brushing the cool paper. She didn't need to look. She'd seen the template before, handed it out herself years ago when she'd been forced to trim her own team during a budget crunch. I completely understand, she said, her voice steady as granite. These decisions are never easy. Relief flickered across Maggie's face, a crack in her polished facade. She'd clearly braced for tears, protests, maybe a lawsuit. Apex Tech wasn't known for graceful exits. Rachel nodded briskly. We'd like you to clear your desk by end of day, keycard, laptop, phone. We'll need those back. Your team will be notified this afternoon. Her team. 6 brilliant engineers, Luis, Sophie, and the others, recruited and mentored by Elena over a decade. The same team that had helped her build the distributed processing algorithm powering Apex Flow, the accounting software that dominated 40% of the Fortune 500. Elena rose, smoothing her navy blazer. Of course. Anything else? Maggie hesitated, thrown by Elena's calm. That's all. Thanks for keeping this professional. Elena walked back to her office, her heels clicking against the sleek tile floor. Through the transparent walls of the executive conference room, she glimpsed Chuck Grayson gesturing wildly at a PowerPoint slide. Q3 revenue projections. His voice boomed through the glass, touting Apex Flow's success, her success, while last year, at the Tech Innovators Conference, he'd called her one of our research grunts in front of 1,000 suits. She shut her office door with a soft click, the sound echoing like a gunshot in her mind. Her desk was a museum of her life. A framed photo of her son Ethan grinning at 16 before the crash that took him, a stack of conference badges from 15 years of industry battles, And that pen. A Christmas gift from her team last year, its engraving glinting under the fluorescent light. Her vision blurred as tears welled up, spilling onto the desk, smudging the ink on a post-it note she'd scribbled months ago. Check patent status. That note was her lifeline. 3 months back, she'd discovered Apex Tech's legal team had never filed the patent for her original algorithm. An oversight, they'd claimed when she'd asked. Something about their cagey response had gnawed at her, so she dug deeper. In a buried strategy memo, she found the truth. They planned to claim the algorithm as company developed, no inventor named, and push her out before securing it. Corporate theft dressed up in legalese. But they didn't know her next move. For months, Elena had refined the algorithm on her personal laptop, late nights fueled by black coffee and memories of Ethan's voice. "You're the smartest person I know, Mom." Those improvements, boosting efficiency by 43%, weren't Apex Tech's. She'd filed a patent under her own name, timestamped and logged outside company hours, with help from an IP attorney she'd quietly hired. The application was pending, due to clear any day now. She pulled out her phone, hands trembling slightly, and texted Dan Carter, CEO of Horizon Innovations, Apex Tech's fiercest rival, "It's happening. Today's my last day." His reply pinged back instantly. "Perfect timing. Contract's ready. Dinner tonight?" A ghost of a smile crossed her lips as she glanced at her calendar. Today was Friday. Monday would be a reckoning. That evening, Elena drove her beat-up Toyota to a discreet bistro in San Francisco's Mission District, far from Apex Tech's gleaming campus. Dan waited in a shadowed booth, his gray suit rumpled from a day of meetings. He slid a whiskey across the table as she sat. "They actually did it," he said, shaking his head. "Cut the woman who built their golden goose. They never saw me." Elena replied, sipping the drink, the burn steadying her nerves. Chuck saw Apex Flow's shiny interface, the revenue charts. The algorithm, just tech stuff to him. Dan leaned in, voice low. "And the patent?" "Pending. Should clear by Monday if the lawyer's right." He grinned, a predator's gleam in his eyes. "Then we've got them. You sign with Horizon, we license your patent, and Apex Tech's flagship sinks without a lifeline." Elena set the glass down, her mind racing. It sounded too easy, too clean. What if Chuck suspected something? What if they dug into her work and found a loophole? She pushed the thought aside, clinging to the pen in her pocket like a talisman. This wasn't just about her. It was for Ethan, for her team, for every late night she'd given Apex Tech only to be tossed aside like yesterday's code. As she left the bistro, the San Francisco fog curled around her like a shroud, the city lights dim pinpricks in the haze. She didn't know it yet, but Apex Tech servers were already humming with a trace of her last login. A breadcrumb that could unravel everything. The game was on, and Elena Harper was about to play for keeps. Elena Harper's phone buzzed on the passenger seat as she drove home from the bistro, the San Francisco fog smearing the windshield into a gray haze. She glanced at the screen. Luis Alvarez, her lead engineer, texting at 10:37 p.m. "Heads up, they're auditing the servers. Maggie asked if you've been pulling files." Her stomach dropped like a stone through water. She pulled into her cramped apartment lot, the Toyota's engine ticking as it cooled, and reread the message under the dim glow of a street lamp. Apex Tech wasn't just letting her go. They were sniffing around, and they were fast. Inside her one-bedroom apartment, the air smelled of stale coffee and dust. She tossed her keys onto the counter, the clatter loud in the silence, and sank onto the worn couch, still clutching the pen engraved with "To Our Guiding Light." The team, Luis, Sophie, and the others, had given it to her last Christmas, a rare moment of warmth in Apex Tech's cold, fluorescent world. Now that gift felt like a lifeline slipping through her fingers. If Maggie and Chuck found evidence tying her patent to company resources, they could claim it all. 15 years of her life reduced to a legal footnote. She opened her personal laptop, its fan whirring like a heartbeat, and logged into the patent portal. The screen glowed. Application US202547892 distributed processing algorithm. Enhanced. Dr. Elena Harper. Status: under review. Estimated approval: March 10, 2025. Monday. 3 days away. She'd spent months refining the algorithm on this machine, her own battered Dell, not Apex Tech's sleek workstation. Every line of code, every time-stamped log was hers. Proof she'd built it alone, fueled by grief and grit after Ethan's death. But Luis's text gnawed at her. What had they found? Her phone buzzed again. Luis, they're pulling logs from the last 6 months. Something about unauthorized access. Be careful, Elena. Unauthorized access? She'd logged into the research server months ago, late one night to cross-check her old work. Nothing proprietary, just context for her improvements. It was a gray area, a risk she'd taken in a haze of exhaustion. If Apex Tech's IT crew traced that login to her, they could argue she'd used company data, invalidating her patent claim. The room spun slightly, the walls closing in. Elena grabbed her phone and dialed Sarah Nguyen, the IP attorney Dan Carter had connected her with. The call rang twice before Sarah's crisp voice cut through. Elena, it's late. Everything okay? No, Elena said, her throat tight. Apex Tech's auditing the servers. They might have my login from last fall. If they prove I accessed anything... Slow down, Sarah interrupted, her tone steady but urgent. Did you download proprietary code, upload anything to their system? No, I just checked some old files for reference. It was my work anyway. Sarah exhaled sharply. That's a gray zone. If they spin it right, they could claim joint ownership. We need that patent approved before they file a challenge. I'll push the examiner tomorrow. Pull every string I've got. But you need to scrub your laptop, anything tying you to Apex Tech, emails, cached files. Delete it now. Cover your tracks. Elena's hands shook as she ended the call. Scrub her laptop? She'd kept it clean, but what if she'd missed something? She opened her file explorer, the screen casting a pale light across her face, and started digging. Old emails from Chuck praising her team effort on Apex Flow. Deleted. A PDF of the original algorithm spec, emailed to herself years ago, gone. Then she hesitated, cursor hovering over a folder labeled Ethan. Inside, a photo, her son at 16, gap-toothed and grinning, taken a week before the crash that stole him. She'd worked those late nights at Apex Tech to drown the pain, to prove she could still build something good. Now, that same company wanted to erase her again. A tear splashed onto the keyboard as she whispered, I'm doing this for you, kid. She dragged the folder to a USB drive, safe, separate, then wiped every trace of Apex Tech from her system. The clock ticked past midnight, each second a hammer blow. She couldn't lose this. Not after losing Ethan. Not after giving Apex Tech her soul. Saturday morning dawned gray and heavy. Elena barely slept, her eyes gritty as she brewed coffee in a chipped mug. Dan Carter texted, dinner went well, contracts drafted. You good? She typed back, complication. Apex Tech's onto me, lawyers handling it. His reply was instant, stay sharp, we're close. Close wasn't enough. She needed certainty. She called Luis, her voice low. Who's happening there? They're in panic mode, Luis said, his accent thick with stress. Maggie's grilling IT about your access, Chuck screaming about intellectual theft. They don't know what you've got, but they're phishing. Keep your head down, Eleanor warned. Don't tell the team yet, not until Monday. Luis hesitated. Sophie's asking questions. She's sharp, Elena. She knows something's up. Sophie Bennett, 28, the youngest on the team, a firecracker with a knack for debugging code and a smile that lit up the lab. Elena's chest tightened. Tell her I'm fine. We'll talk Monday. She hung up, staring at the pen on the coffee table. Monday was her D-Day. Either the patent cleared and she'd flip the table on Apex Tech, or they'd bury her in court. Dan's offer was her parachute. Chief Innovation Officer at Horizon Innovations, her team intact and exclusive licensing for her algorithm. But the server audit loomed like a guillotine. What if they found something real? What if they twisted her one late-night login into a noose? That afternoon, Elena met Dan again, this time at a park overlooking the Bay Bridge. Seagulls wheeled overhead, their cries sharp against the wind. He handed her a folder, Horizon's contract, a 7-figure signing bonus, equity, royalties. "Sign this," he said, "and we'll bury Apex Tech by Monday night. Their whole empire rests on your code." She flipped through the pages, the numbers dizzying. "It's not just about the money," she said quietly. "It's my team, my work. They took credit for years. Chuck strutting at conferences while I sat in the back." Dan nodded, his jaw tight. "I know. That's why we're doing this. But we need that patent clean. Any dirt, and Chuck's lawyers will eat us alive." Elena clutched the folder, the wind tugging at its edges. "Sarah's pushing it. If it clears Monday, we're golden. And if it doesn't?" Dan's eyes searched hers. She didn't answer. She couldn't. The pen in her pocket felt heavier, a silent vow to Ethan, to her team, to herself. She'd gambled everything on this. Her career, her reputation, her last shred of hope. As she drove home, her phone stayed silent, but she knew Apex Tech's IT crew was working overtime, combing through logs, hunting for her shadow. The fog thickened, swallowing the city, and Elena Harper braced for a weekend that could make or break her. The clock on Elena Harper's kitchen wall ticked past 8 a.m. on Friday, March 7th, 2025. Her last day at Apex Tech. She stood at the counter, sipping coffee that had gone cold, her mind replaying the server audit Luis had warned her about. The pen engraved with "To Our Guiding Light" lay beside her, a quiet anchor in the storm brewing beyond her apartment's thin walls. She'd spent the weekend scrubbing her laptop, praying Sarah Nguyen could rush the patent through by Monday. But as she packed her cardboard box, Ethan's photo, conference badges, a chipped mug, doubt gnawed at her like rust on steel. What if Apex Tech had already found something? She arrived at Apex Tech's gleaming headquarters at 9:30, the Silicon Valley sun glinting off the glass facade. The lobby buzzed with Friday energy, coders in hoodies, execs in tailored suits. But Elena felt like a ghost drifting through it. She swiped her keycard one last time and headed to her office, the box tucked under her arm. Her desk was still a shrine to 15 years. A faded sticky note from Sophie saying, "You're the best boss ever." A photo of Luis grinning at a Team BB. She started packing, each item a stab of memory. The door creaked open at 10:15. Margaret, Maggie Reynolds, leaned against the frame, her arms crossed, her red lipstick stark against her pale skin. "Morning, Elena," she said, her tone syrupy with false warmth. "Just checking in. We found something interesting in the server logs. Your login, October 14th, 11:47 p.m. Care to explain?" Elena's pulse spiked, but she kept her hand steady, wrapping Ethan's photo in tissue paper. "I was cross-referencing old work," she said, meeting Maggie's gaze. "My work. On my time." Maggie's smile tightened. "On our server? That's a gray area, Elena. You know how Chuck feels about loose ends." Before Elena could respond, the air shifted. Charles Chuck Grayson stormed in, his broad shoulders filling the doorway. His tie was askew, his face flushed with fury. "What the hell did you do, Harper?" he barked, slamming a printout onto her desk. It was a server log, her username circled in red. "You think you're slick, sneaking around my systems. I built this company. You're nothing without me." Elena stood, her 5'5" frame dwarfed by his bulk, but her voice cut like a blade. "You built Apex Flow on my algorithm, Chuck. You don't even understand how it works, just the dollar signs it spits out. If you'd filed the patent like you promised, we wouldn't be here." Chuck's eyes narrowed, a vein pulsing in his temple. "You're stealing from me. I'll sue you into the ground. Your little personal project won't stand up in court. Hand over whatever you've got, or I'll make sure you never work in this valley again." The room crackled with tension. Maggie shifted uncomfortably. But Alina held Chuck's stare. "You don't own what you can't comprehend," she said, her voice low and lethal. "Chuck my contract. Anything I built off Mars on my gear is mine. You're fishing, Chuck, because you're scared." He laughed, a harsh grating sound. "Scared? Of a washed-up 55-year-old? Pack your crap and get out. You're done." Elena placed the pen on the desk, a deliberate farewell, and picked up her box. "See you Monday," she said, brushing past him. His glare burned into her back as she walked out, the glass doors hissing shut behind her. She didn't look back, but her heart hammered. Chuck's threat wasn't empty. He'd lawyer up fast if he found proof. She drove home in a daze, the Bay Area traffic a blur of headlights and horns. Her phone stayed silent all afternoon, a fragile piece she clung to. She unpacked the box on her living room floor, Ethan's photo staring up at her, his grin a silent cheer. "I'm almost there, kid," she whispered, tracing his face. The patent was her trump card, her ticket to flip Apex Tech's arrogance into ash. Dan Carter's contract waited in her email, a lifeline to Horizon Innovation. She just needed Monday. Then, at 8:42 p.m., her phone rang, shattering the quiet. Louie's name flashed on the screen. She answered, a smile tugging at her lips. "Hey, you holding up over there?" "Elena? Louie. She was in a car accident. After our call yesterday, she signed with Horizon. Release, never, out of view. She was in a car accident. After our call yesterday, she was in a car accident. After our call yesterday, she was..." The world tilted. Elena's phone slipped, clattering to the floor. "What?" she choked out, scrambling to pick it up. "No." "She's gone," he said, sobbing now. "They said it was instant." She was so excited. "Elena," she kept saying, "you gave her a future." Elena sank to her knees, the room spinning. Sophie Bennett, 28, bright, fearless, dead. Her laugh echoed in Elena's mind. That day, she'd fixed a bug no one else could crack, shouting, "You're the only one who believed in me." Elena had pulled her into this, convinced her to jump to Horizon. Now, Sophie's blood stained the highway because of it. "This is my fault," Elena rasped, tears streaming down her face. "If I hadn't..." "No," Luis cut in, fierce through his grief. "She chose this. We all did. Sophie believed in you. She'd hate it if you stopped now." Elena clutched the pen, its edges biting into her palm. "I can't lose anyone else," she whispered. Ethan's death had hollowed her out. Sophie's carved deeper. She saw Chuck's smug face, Maggie's cold smile. Apex Tech had taken her career, and now her team was paying the price. But Luis's words echoed. "She'd hate it if you stopped." I won't," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "For Sophie, for all of you." Luis sniffed. "Monday, then, we're with you." She hung up, staring at the pen through blurred eyes. The weekend stretched ahead, a gauntlet of grief and rage. Chuck's threat loomed. "I'll sue you into the ground." And now, Apex Tech had a fresh wound to exploit. Could they pin Sophie's defection on her, twist it into sabotage? The patent had to clear or she'd lose everything. Her work, her team, her last shred of purpose. Elena stood, wiping her face, and opened her laptop. An email from Sarah Nguyen glowed in the inbox. "Patent update, examiners pushing it through, expect approval Monday a.m., hold tight." She exhaled, shaky but resolute. Monday wasn't just a reckoning now, it was a memorial. Sophie's death lit a fire under her, hotter than revenge. Apex Tech wouldn't just fall, they'd burn. Monday, March 10, 2025, broke over Silicon Valley with a brittle, cloudless sky. Elena Harper hadn't slept. Sophie's death carved a raw wound through her weekend, her apartment a mausoleum of grief and resolve. She dressed in a charcoal suit, a power move she'd bought for this day, and gripped the pen engraved with "To Our Guiding Light" as she left. At 7:30 a.m., a Horizon Innovations town car pulled up, its sleek black frame a stark contrast to her battered Toyota. She slid into the leather seat, her laptop humming with Sarah Nguyen's last email. Patent approved. Official at 7 a.m. You're clear. A lifeline. But the war was just beginning. At Horizon's headquarters in Palo Alto, Dan Carter greeted her in the lobby, his eyes shadowed with fatigue. Press release went live at 7, he said, guiding her to a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows. Industry's buzzing. Horizon acquires revolutionary algorithm, welcomes creator Dr. Elena Harper as Chief Innovation Officer. We named you sole inventor. Apex Tech's got no claim now. Elena nodded, setting her box, Ethan's photo, the pen, on the desk. And the licensing? Clear as day, Dan said, a grin tugging at his lips. Any company using your tech negotiates with us. Apex flows dead in the water without a deal. He handed her a tablet. Headlines scrolled. Apex Tech stock dips 5% amid patent shock. Who is Elena Harper? She exhaled, a flicker of triumph cutting through her numbness. Sophie's face flashed in her mind. You gave me a future. And she clenched the pen tighter. Then her phone lit up. Louise, 9:15 a.m. Chaos here. Chuck's losing it. What did you do? She smiled faintly, texting back. Check your personal email. Offers for you all. Horizon had slots for her team, senior roles, raises. Sophie's slot now a ghost in the lineup. But Apex Tech wasn't done. At 10:30, an email from Chuck hit her inbox, desperation dripping from the screen. Elena, there's a misunderstanding. Call me ASAP. She forwarded it to Horizon's legal team, her pulse steady. Let him squirm. Across town, Apex Tech's executive floor was a war zone. Luis's updates poured in, Chuck pacing the conference room, barking at Maggie and the legal chief, Margaret's face pale as IT wheeled in servers for forensic analysis. By 11 a.m., the stock had dropped 12%, investors spooked by Horizon's bombshell. Then, at noon, a new text from Luis. They found something. Old code in the server. Maggie's on the phone with lawyers. Ina's stomach twisted. She called Saragwin, voice tight. They've got code from the original algorithm. Can they use it? Sarah swore under her breath. If it's from your early work, before the enhancements, it's theirs. But if they tie it to your patent, they could file an injunction. We've got hours, not days. Dan burst in, tablet in hand. Apex Tech just dropped a press release. Claims Dr. Harper stole proprietary code. They're suing for ownership, Elena. Emergency hearing set for 3 p.m. The room spun. Elena sank into her chair, the pen digging into her palm. They're bluffing, she said, but her voice shook. Chuck had moved fast. Too fast. That October login, the one Maggie had grilled her about, was their ammunition. If the judge bought it, her patent was toast. Horizon's deal, her team's future, Sophie's legacy, all gone. We fight it, Dan said, slamming the tablet down. Our legal team's prepping your logs, timestamps, personal equipment. It's airtight. Is it? Elena snapped, her grief boiling over. They've got a fragment, enough to muddy the water. 6 months in court, Dan, and Apex Tech buries us in PR spin. I can't... She stopped, tears burning her eyes. I can't let Sophie's death be for nothing. Dan's face softened. Then we go nuclear. Public disclosure, every log, every file, prove you built this alone. Apex Tech can't outrun the truth. Elena froze. That's insane. They'll twist it, say, I betrayed my team, drag Sophie into this. Or they'll see a woman who fought for what's hers, Dan countered. Your call, Elena. Clock's ticking. She stared at Ethan's photo, Sophie's voice echoing, You believed in me. Chuck's threat rang in her ears. I'll sue you into the ground. She'd lost too much to back down. Do it, she said, her voice steel. Set a press conference, 2 p.m. I'll bury them myself. Horizon's PR team scrambled, booking a room at the Palo Alto Marriott. At 1:50, Elena stood backstage, her suit crisp, her hands trembling. The room filled, reporters, tech bloggers, industry suits, cameras flashing like gunfire. Dan squeezed her shoulder. You've got this. She stepped to the podium at 2, the mic amplifying her shallow breaths. I was obsessed with my time. Every line coded on my time, my machine. Everything lost, every line coded on my time, my machine. Apex Tech claims theft, but here's the truth. Her hands shook as she connected the laptop to a projector. Files flashed up. Tens matrix from 2024, late night commits, her Dell's serial number. I lost my son 10 years ago, she said, tears spilling. I poured my soul into this for him. Last week I lost Sophie Bennett, one of my team, because she believed in me. She signed with Horizon and died hours later. This, she gestured to the screen, is for her, for every engineer Apex Tech discarded. The room hushed, a collective gasp rippling through. A reporter dabbed her eyes, another scribbled furiously. Elena's voice broke. Chuck Grayson took credit for my work, but he can't take my truth. Judge me if you want. I'm done hiding. She stepped back, legs wobbling as Dan took over, fielding questions. Twitter exploded. Elena Harper exposes Apex Tech, tech giant caught in lie. Apex Tech stock plummeted 20% by 2:30. At 3 p.m., the hearing began, but the judge, flooded with Horizon's evidence and public outrage, dismissed the injunction in 20 minutes. Apex Tech's case collapsed, Chuck's bluff exposed. Elena sat in her new office at 4, Ethan's photo on the desk, the pen in her hand. Luis texted, "You did it. Sophie'd be proud." She cried then, deep, wrenching sobs for Sophie, for Ethan, for the fight she'd won, but Apex Tech wasn't dead yet. Chuck's silence was too loud, and Elena knew he'd strike again. Monday wasn't the end, it was the spark. The dust settled over Silicon Valley by Tuesday, March 11th, 2025, but for Elena Harper, the air still crackled with aftermath. Her Monday press conference had lit a firestorm. Apex Tech cratered 30% by market close. Charles Chuck Grayson's empire teetering on the edge. She sat in her new Horizon Innovations office, the pen engraved with "To Our Guiding Light," resting beside Ethan's photo, its silver frame catching the morning light. Her victory tasted bitter, laced with Sophie's absence, but the fight wasn't over, not yet. By 9 a.m., Luis Alvarez and the remaining 4 engineers from her Apex Tech team arrived at Horizon, their faces a mix of exhaustion and awe. Luis handed her the pen she'd left on her desk Friday, a quiet retrieval from the wreckage. "Sophie'd want you to have this," he said, his voice thick. "She was proud of you, Elena. We all are." She took it, her fingers brushing the engraving, and nodded, unable to speak. The team's new contracts, senior roles, hefty raises were signed by noon, a lifeline she'd fought for. But Sophie's empty chair haunted the room. Apex Tech's collapse accelerated. At 2 p.m., Luis texted from his old desk. "All hands meeting, Chuck spinning it, we'll rebuild stronger, nobody's buying it." By Wednesday, 2 major clients, Fortune 500 giants, reached out to Horizon, spooked by Apex Tech's instability. Horizon's stock climbed 15%, while Apex Tech's bled another 8%. Then, at 3:30, an unexpected call. Rachel Kim from Apex Tech HR, her voice tight. "Elena, it's about your patent. We misjudged ownership. Chuck wants to negotiate." Elena leaned back, the pen twirling in her hand. "No misunderstanding, Rachel. My contract's clear. Off him's my equipment, my IP. Tell Chuck to call Horizon's legal team. We'll talk licensing when he's ready to eat crow." Rachel sighed, defeated, and hung up. Elena smirked, a spark of satisfaction flaring. Chuck's ego wouldn't bend. Not yet. Thursday brought a seismic shift. Horizon's legal team forwarded an email from James Donovan, Apex Tech's interim CEO, appointed after an emergency board meeting ousted Chuck and Maggie overnight. Dr. Harper, congratulations on your new role. I'm here to stabilize Apex Tech. We'd like a fair licensing deal, public acknowledgement of your contributions included. Can we meet next week? Elena forwarded it to Dan Carter with a note. Phase 1 done. His reply pinged back, masterstroke, boards toasting you. The industry buzzed. TechCrunch ran, can Apex Tech survive the Harper fallout, while Forbes dubbed her the algorithm avenger. Apex Tech stock stabilized Friday, but at a 25% loss from Monday's open, a brutal hit. Horizon's PR team scheduled Elena for 3 interviews, her story rippling beyond Silicon Valley. Yet as she sat alone that night, the pen in her hand, Sophie's laugh echoed louder than the headlines. Victory felt hollow without her. A year later, March 10, 2026, Elena stood on the stage at the National Technology Innovation Conference in San Francisco, 1,000 eyes fixed on her. Her charcoal suit was sharper now, her silver hair a badge of defiance. The applause thundered as the host introduced her. Dr. Elena Harper, Chief Innovation Officer at Horizon Innovations, creator of the distributed processing algorithm that redefined data handling. She stepped to the podium, the pen tucked in her pocket, Ethan's courage and Sophie's fire pulsing through her. Thank you, she began, her voice steady but warm. A year ago, I walked out of Apex Tech with a box and a broken dream. They called me expendable. A 55-year-old woman in a young man's game. But today, I'm here to talk about ownership. Owning your work, your value, no matter who tries to erase you. The crowd leaned in, phones recording. I lost my son, Ethan, a decade ago. Last year, I lost Sophie Bennett, a brilliant engineer, because she believed in me. This, she gestured to a screen, flashing her algorithm specs, is theirs as much as mine. A hush fell, she swallowed hard, tears glinting. Innovation isn't anonymous, it's people. Messy, flawed, real. Companies like Apex Tech forgot that, but we won't. So protect your work, your teams, your truth. That's how we change this industry. The room erupted, a standing ovation shaking the walls. Behind her, the screen flickered to Sophie's photo, smiling with "For the Guiding Lights" in bold. Backstage, young engineers swarmed her. Women mostly, eyes bright with questions. A 30-year-old coder clutched her arm. Your story saved me, she said. I log everything now. Personal time, my laptop, thank you. Elena smiled, handing her a card. Keep building, we need you. That night, Dan Carter knocked on her office door, a bottle of champagne in hand. Happy anniversary, he said, pouring 2 glasses. Horizon's market cap just passed Apex Tech's. First time ever you did that. She raised her glass, the bubbles catching the light. We did it, she corrected. Sophie, Luis, you, everyone who bet on me. He nodded at an envelope on her desk. An invite to the Women in Tech Leadership Summit. Topic, owning your intellectual value. You're an icon now, Dan said, the exec who didn't see what she had till it was gone. Chuck's a cautionary tale. Elena sipped her drink, the pen warm in her pocket. It was never revenge, she said softly. It was recognition. For me, for Sophie, for every name scrubbed from a patent. Dan clinked her glass. To recognition, then. Apex Tech limped on under James Donovan, new policies echoing Horizon's IP protections, inventor credits. Proof her fight had shifted the game. Her inbox pinged. A TechCrunch alert. Apex Tech's licensing deal with Horizon, signed that day, named her as creator. Their stock ticked up 2%, a fragile recovery. She closed her laptop, gazing out at the city lights. At 56, she'd found what Apex Tech never gave her, a legacy etched in code and courage. But questions lingered. Had she pushed too hard, risking her team for her truth? Was Apex Tech's fall justice or overkill? She didn't dwell. Ethan's grin, Sophie's laugh, the pen's weight answered for her. Elena Harper wasn't just a survivor, she was a beacon, and Silicon Valley would never forget her name. What do you think? Hero or reckless dreamer? Did Apex Tech deserve its fate? Drop your take below and subscribe. Let's hit 1,000 subscribers together.